let's talk about uh, Mr. T Experience. Released in 1990 on Lookout Records, Mr. T Experience's third album called Making Things with Light. It's the band's first album to include Aaron Rubin on bass. Let's see. Oh, the title of the album is just refers to the light bright cover art, I guess.
It's the band.
Uh,
They're like on the
yeah, it's like the
like
band
the little kids
being.
doing the thing. Yeah,
Yeah, light brights are dope. Actually,
yeah.
I used to.
It just feels very 90s when you see that, right? Or
Oh, dude,
80s.
this is so straight pulled from my childhood. I didn't know that this was the Wikipedia. Obviously, that's what I'm looking at. It
Uh-huh.
says that it was compiled of several recording sessions over a 2-year period. We're going to hear about this a couple of times in this conversation because I think the Queers also took a long time to compile that album.
Yeah, and this one, what it was is they they were okay. So Doctor Frank, who is the guy in Mr. T Experience, he goes back in East Bay and punk rock. He predates Gilman Street and all that. He was a radio DJ around there, and that's how Larry Livermore and everyone kind of got to know him. He did not want to. They did not want to be on Lookout initially for their first couple of albums, and Larry doesn't really know why. They just kind of didn't feel like
That's
Lookout was
weird.
the right place. And then so they went on Rough Trades Records, which had a lot of East Bay bands, but was actually like a foreign based label. And so
Okay.
like like Larry with Lookout, he was pretty like offended by it that like the band that literally had a song about Gilman Street on their first album wasn't on Lookout. With that said, he had remained friends with Larry, and he was even the guy who put Larry in touch with a lot of producers and stuff to get Lookout going. So they were, I think, intending to do their next album with someone. I don't know. They may have shopped it around a little bit to some bigger guys, and there was a little bit of interest, and so they were recording some stuff. But the label they were with fell apart. Like they like went out of business. So
Hey,
then
that sucks.
yeah, and then, but also in that meantime, and Lookout hadn't done much, but they had Op Ivy at that time. Green Day was on that first album. They were a lot more of a legit label than the label that was just the Lookouts. So at that point, they're in there with their third album, and so the reason why it was cobbled together is because they actually didn't know where it was going to be released, and a lot of some of that Lookout stuff would be like that, where bands and you have experience with this, bands sometimes come to you with the album. You're not necessarily uh recording it with them. You're more helping them package it and distribute it and that kind of thing. And this is kind of, I would say, a little bit in that vein.
I think that that's an important distinction we need to make when talking about record labels. If you are in a band, I think it would be in your best interest to complete your music or at least have some solid demos ready
Mhm.
and bring that to a label, like you said, for packaging, distribution, and maybe some PR. That way you own all of your music. I want to be very clear. I think that's the most important thing about my label is that we don't own anything. Like that's not what I do. So, and I say that because talking about these bands, like whenever I go back and look at the history of punk rock and look at these bands and what they did, how they did it, it always blows my mind that they wanted all these labels to pay for all this stuff, and then they're surprised later when they don't own their masters. And I'm like, well, at least back then, that's just how that was done. If they
Mhm.
paid for all of your work, like all your recording costs and everything like that, that was the perk of that, was that they got to keep the master recordings. Man, try to avoid that at all costs, dude. Keep your music, man.
Oh, right,
Uh,
the famously, right, the Beatles catalog got sold to like
right.
Revlon or something like that. Yeah.
Dude, Michael Jackson owned I don't know how many people's catalogs, dude. Like it's crazy, man. Keep your music if you can. I didn't want to get off on a tangent. So this whole entire episode is going to be about a very specific kind of music within
Mhm.
Ramones core. Uh, I think we need to keep in mind that we're talking about albums from 1990. Dude, that is 35
Yeah.
years ago. 35 years ago was 1990. So just remember that when you're looking at some of the artwork and especially some of the lyrics, man. The Mr. T Experience is one of those bands that I probably had no business even knowing who they were. I
Mhm.
found out about them because I was given a tape. Now, I did some talking to my sister recently, and I think I figured out what was actually on that tape. I had kept telling people that I thought it was Mr. T Experience, Less Than Jake, Op Ivy, and Crim Shrine.
Mhm.
That wasn't who was on it. Actually, they were kind of on it, but it was in a lot less chunks. I thought there was only 4 bands on the whole tape. No, that was like one side of the tape. But on the other
Mhm.
side of it, it was the Queer, Screeching Weasel, um, Oh my goodness, dude, what was the other two bands? I'm forgetting now. Anyways, it was a whole bunch of bands, but that's how I heard about Mr. T Experience. There was probably 5 songs by this band on this tape that I got way back when I was very first getting into this music. So I
Mhm,
heard about this band a long time ago, and I liked them right off the bat. Now, I remember liking them immediately upon hearing them, but I was like 13, 14
mhm,
years old when I heard this band. And I want to make a point to say that what I wrote down here in regards to this is that I used to love this band. Immediately upon first listen, I liked it. This time around, it took a couple of listens to get back into it. I can see how, if only given one listen, someone may not like this. But you got to let it cook, man. It gets way better with the more spins you give it. With the more time you spend with this record, this band specifically, the vocal styling, all that stuff starts to become, oh, I get it now. It's not something that you can listen to upon one, or you can, but I can understand why you wouldn't necessarily care for it upon the first listen. I just think that I've grown a lot as a music listener in the past 3 years,
mhm,
and I've gone back and given a lot of stuff second, third, and fourth chances that I never thought I would do, and it's really opened my eyes to the fact that, man, I guess you do have to give songs more than one listen. I used to be of the mind that if I heard something and I didn't like it, I just moved on,
mhm.
and it just was like, "It is what it is. I don't have time for this, man. I got there's plenty of stuff to listen to." I don't know that that's the wise way to go about this anymore, man.
I agree.
You know.
That's why I did it for a very short time. I hated like the whole idea of reaction content because it's just that's not like it's cool to see that. Like I get the appeal of like experiencing a song with someone for the first
Right.
time, but it's not really good analysis. It's not really good a good like album review or good, it's just I don't think it's meant to be done like that. And I think you say that about Mr. T experience, but I think that applies to Ramones core as a whole because it almost seems like a parody genre when you first listen to it every time you give it a first listen. Like
Yeah.
I have always had the thing a little bit with Ramones core, kind of the inverse that you have with the Rancid and the Clash, where you say like, I have the thing it was influenced by, so I don't need it. And like, I'm such a big Ramones person that a lot of times when I would hear Ramones core stuff, and I still do this when I have a hard time going back to it because it just sounds like a rip off Ramones for a second
Yeah.
because it is of
Right.
genres can be derivative. This stuff is very derivative of one band, like to the point that the specific songs that they're ripping off within the music, but that's almost clouds the real melodies and harmonies and the real genius of a lot of these songs with both of these
Oh,
bands.
oh, dude, we're gonna talk about that too, man. Because here's the thing: these are very much bands that were like, I want to sound like the Ramones, but I want to do it way better. Because, dude, let's be honest, musically speaking, like talent wise, with
Disagree majorly on this point that
you
you're
don't
about to
think that
make.
they're better guitar players than the Ramones.
I don't care. That the Ramones
No,
have better
that
songs,
no,
and I would rather
that's
listen. But I would rather
that's
listen. Like I know I get what you're
that's a
saying.
whole different conversation, though.
Okay, I get
Like, what do you
no, but
like better? Different conversation. Like, just
yeah.
talent, like sheer talent.
So I think I'll be in agreement with you. You can finish your point. I thought you were really gonna say like that this stuff is just so much better as an
No,
end
no, no,
product.
no, no, no. I'm
That's
just
why I
saying,
was like,
like they
oh, oh.
wanted to do what they were doing, but do it better, not necessarily create better songs. Because I don't know that you can create songs that are more timeless than the Ramones. I don't know that you can do that.
Uh-huh.
So yes, with all respect to the Ramones, I love them too. This is not a dig at the Ramones. This is just more or less praising these bands for having incredible musicianship. Uh, because I love the Ramones. It would be really hard to get me to, like you said, why would I need to listen to anything besides the
Mhm,
Ramones if I wanted that kind of music? Well, they bring something different to the table, is my whole point. They
mhm,
bring guitar. They're more like the Ramones with the Beach Boys, and then like snotty punk attitude, which is different than the Ramones. So that's why I can listen to it. But like they, every really good Ramones core band has a shtick. All of them.
mhm,
Mr. T Experience does. The Queers do. Screeching Weasel does. Masked Intruder specifically does. Like all these bands have a shtick, right? You can't do it without the shtick because if it's without the shtick, you're just the Ramones. Well, we've already got the best version of that we can get. So I'm not arguing that Ramones are A, top tier, B, amazing. Like I'm not arguing that at all. I just think that like they weren't the best musicians. They
mhm.
said this themselves.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a hot take or anything, but I think you had to do that in order to get attention, though. You weren't going to be able to copy them and bring nothing else to the table without people going, "Why? Like,
Mhm.
why?"
It's it's almost as if the way I think of it is like these bands almost perform as if they were contemporaries of the Ramones and not influenced by the Ramones, almost
That's a good point.
as if they were just like say like if they were in the same scene drawing the same conclusions, but happened
Valid.
to be plopped in the middle of the 90s. And it's so for and I don't know if I actually appreciate that or not. And let me tell you what I'm and not this not in a negative way, but like I would say that I kind of respect a little bit more what like a Green Day and a Blink 182 would do, where they take the idea of the Ramones and then actually put their own spin on it rather than trying to perfect the Ramones, which is what I think like these bands kind of from like on the out like it, as sort of a concept do. Now, when you dig a little deeper to these bands, I think there's more to them than that. But
I agree.
in terms of that veneer, it's a bit of a turnoff for me at like as a genre as a whole. I've
Okay.
always sort of taken that sort of issue with Ramones core and like Mr. T experiences it is I think more like you said it's his voice that I think throws you off a little bit. It's the super 50s sound that sounds almost more 50s. Like, I think the Queers are a little more Ramone sounding right off the bat, where
Yeah.
this stuff you feel it's like 50s and then it's like the punk and the Ramones
Well, I
sort of
think
sort of comes through it. Yeah,
Mr. T experience would fall into that category of what you call it, from that time period,
the
more so
contemporary. Yeah.
contemporary, more so than the queers would. But like,
Mhm.
see, it's just a matter of like where do you go left or right when you get to this crossroads? Because you get to the crossroads and go, yeah, but I'd rather have Blink because they're doing something different. Where I go,
Mhm.
no, I like what they're doing. I'll go this way because I like. It's just like I eat the same food every day, right? So
Mhm.
why do I need different music? I like this music. Let me find other bands that sound kind of like this. I'm okay with the word generic is not a bad word to me. I
Yeah.
like that word just fine. So it's really all about personal taste. And I'm not digging on anybody. Like I'm trying to be as I get older and get more into this and do this longer, I just want to be open minded about stuff. I don't really care necessarily what other people think as far as like, do I think it's good or bad? We can disagree on something, man. It doesn't matter. I don't give a shit, dude. I like what I like. You like what you like. And I'm not talking about Rob here, other folks. I'm talking about just the general audience. People sometimes want to go, oh, well, you don't like this much, so we can't be friendly or whatever. It's like, that doesn't make any sense, dude. Like, there's a bazillion different bands out there. Like, we're not going to all like the same shit. You know, people they're like, don't care about Rancid that I'm really good friends with. So many people. Like, it's just, I don't know. But I like I love this genre, man. And I don't
Mhm.
know everything about it. There's a ton of bands I don't know about, but I know a fair bit. Every time I learn some more stuff about it, or hear a new band in this genre, it excites me because I've been trying to figure out why. So the Ramones took 1950s pop rock and roll, they sped it up and they yelled it. Well, one of my fondest memories as a kid was being in the car, and the only music we ever got to listen to was the oldie station, which was 50s to 60s pop rock, top 40 pop.
Mhm.
So when I heard the Ramones the first time, I was like, "Oh, this is familiar to me. I like this. It's faster, which I'm good with because I'm a kid." So I always gravitated to that sound. So I think that's what it is about this music that I love is that it reminds me of being a kid. I just never really put that together until
Mhm.
recently.
Yeah.
And so I love all of this 50s rocks, like doo-wop, love song, like R&B stuff, hot rods, greasy hair. Like that's my shit, man. I love it. Now I don't look like that necessarily, but I will listen to that all day, every day. And the Mr. T experience, I think, is one of the more unique voices in that genre. So I do understand why some people may not dig it so much, but once you get past that a little bit, the songwriting is just so damn good.
They're also very much like so we always associate like Screeching Weasel, I think, as like the head of the snake with this genre and all these other bands that are sort of like off to the side of
Yeah, I
them.
guess so, huh?
But and I think that's just because they outside of obviously bands that got super huge, they're the biggest of like the lookout level bands.
Right.
But Mr. T experience like in so it, but Mr. T experience is more of the Ramones as it pertains, I think, to Ramones core. Like
Right.
they're much more of the trendsetter. They're actually so like the queers are from Boston. The Screeching Weasel is from Chicago. This is East Bay punk Ramones core right at its kind of center. Like Mr. T experienced a lot of the creating of it. I think the establishing of it, and they stood out. Like I think that here's the other thing on that too. Like Dr. Frank always stood out with his musical taste. Like even as a DJ, like I think he would have been good friends with you at such of what you were just talking about. He was always playing on his college rock station a lot of 50 stuff, a lot of just
Yeah.
tons of melodic stuff. And so when he came in, we think of Gilman as a very pop punky scene, but at its
Right.
inception, it was just another like kind of punk
Rock
town.
and roll. Yeah.
Yeah, and you had, you had Neurosis, you had some of these other guys, and this predates all of that. And Mr. T Experience, they talked about Dr. Frank talked about it. His way of standing out is let's be, and it's before he had the actual catchphrase of this song's about a girl, but let's be the cheesiest kind of like band we can be. Let's be the band because we're not really those kind of guys, even though we like that kind of music. Let's kind of go actually in that other direction, almost to like an extreme. So I think that was kind of like intentional to a bit. So like once it, but it's like to what we were saying, you kind of need those sort of things in place to understand that it's both, it's not a joke, but it has a certain tone to it. And once you could start accepting it on those terms, I think it's really appealing. I will say, like, I learned about Mr. T Experience straight up from Tom DeLonge. Like that one I
Oh,
could tell this
really?
just in interviews, he would always be talking about Mr. And at first I thought he was talking about the band T Rex, like the 70s, like glitter rock
Yeah.
band. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
and again, that Tom DeLonge, but this is like, and I kept hearing about like Mr. T Experience, and then somehow that led me to no, kind of figuring that was, punk rock ish, and then to find out that, oh, they're this band that influenced all these other bands in this huge band. And when I hear their music, a lot of what I was saying kind of reminds me of a band like Blink-182, which is a kind of silly band that's sort of meant to be taken serious. That when you get past the sheen of it, you understand that there's melody there, and there's that all of those kind of good qualities about that. But I can see so much why Mr. T Experience was so influential on both the underground and I think on the mainstream.
I think people would be surprised to hear that Mr. T Experience was a big influence on Blink, but if you go back and listen to their first three records, you can hear it. Also, I said something earlier in the episode that I totally didn't realize I was just not saying correctly until you said something. I think I mentioned two California bands earlier, and that's not really what I meant to say. Like I was just thinking of Lookout Records and all that Berkeley shit, and you said the Queers from Boston. I was like, oh, that's right. I fucking completely messed that up.
Yeah,
So,
the Rat is like famously a club
dude,
on the East Coast.
I when you said that, I was like, oh, I'm so dumb, dude. I'm gonna get
But that
roasted for that.
that it still kind of counts, I would say, as California punk rock, kind of because it's on Lookout. It's
Yes,
associated with a lot of
but
that part of,
I
yeah.
totally meant to. I didn't really. I just said it wrong. Is my point. Like I know the Queers are not from California. I just misspoke and didn't catch it until you said something, and then I was like, "Ooh, that's bad." So,
Yeah,
anyways,
and
so when
they're
you're
not quite
typing
as
your mean comments, just understand that I know.
it's funny because Screeching Weasel very much has a Chicago. They're the Chicago band that's in Lookout. Like that very much is part of their identity. But whatever.
But yeah, Mr. T Experience is an interesting band. I want to know where they got their name from. I mean, obviously, uh,
Yeah, I think it
you
was
know.
just a. I think it was just. No, you know what? He's talked about that. And shoot, now
Oh, really?
type that in the comment section. But I mean, it is off of obviously the A Team or whatever. But it's. I think he was just a silly guy, man. He has like a heck of a sense of humor. Like he's just he's one of the we get like the pioneers of punk
Ha!
humor. He belongs like on that Mount Rushmore.
All right, so check it out. I just had the foresight to like Google it as I was
Mhm.
fixing to say it. And it says, let's see here. In the summer of '85, the the four men formed the Mr. T Experience with, so and so, so 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 and so. And it says the band's name was chosen on a whim, a kind of accidental thing Portman recalled in a 1995 interview. There was kind of a concept behind it because in 1985, Mr. T had all these products. There was like Mr. T air freshener, socks, cereal, deodorant, and whatever. We thought we'd be the punk rock band, just another in a long line of products. Okay, not a great concept, but hey, one of our records, the title was "Too Late to Change the Name." That's awesome. I
Well,
like that it was just like a thing that was a timestamp essentially, and then they're like, "Oops, that did." We've been around too long for that to stay relevant and like funny. Oh
but
well, like
but their sound is very much like a timestamp from a time they're not even from. So
very
that
true.
kind of adds to it. And then what's cool is they have the coolest abbreviation of a band. Like
Oh,
how many times have did I as a kid read the words MTX and have no idea that that's also the band Mr. T
so
Experience?
even as a fan of the band, I see that and I still don't think of Mr. T Experience.
Mm.
And I had a record in my record store. Somebody pointed out, like, "Oh, that's a good Mr. T Experience record," and I was like, I just passed it up. I didn't even stop and really look at it, man, because I just didn't. It didn't click. Because most of my catalog of theirs that I owned was on like mixtapes. I never really
Mm.
saw album art, You know what I'm saying? So like I don't
Yeah.
even know what half the songs that I heard by them, I couldn't tell you what they were from. They were just songs that I had on mixtapes because I was given, 90-minute tapes recorded with a bunch of punk songs. And I don't think kids today would understand that really. And I never
A,
went and did digging because I just didn't care, I guess. I don't know, man.
a lot of like this type of punk I heard through tapes. Like very
Yeah,
similar, like you're saying. And so because like it's just kids can't appreciate how accessible music is to them. That's
man.
just what it is. And so like
So much
you
easier
have a
now.
tape and then your friend you borrow the tape from your friend and they have it for a little while. And that's just kind of it doesn't like it seems
Well,
crazy to think of now, but that's just how it was.
what I would do is my mom had a dual stereo cassette deck. I have one now in here. It's really nice, and I have it like this for this exact reason, just in case I ever need to do this. But I would go get a tape from my buddy, and in my house I had two stacks of tapes. I had 60 minutes and I had 90 minutes. And I would come and be like, okay, what tape did they give me? Oh, it's a 60-minute tape. I'd go get a new blank 60-minute, and I would just dub the whole ass tape. And I had all kinds of tapes from all my friends. I had probably 30 tapes at one point in this little box, all handwritten, and they wouldn't have song titles. It would just be like track 1 through 4, Mr. T Experience. Track 5 through 8 is Less Than Jake. Tracks, 9 through 15, Rancid, whatever it was. But it was all these little mixtapes. And my sister had those for a long time. I wish she still had them. I would do a lot to get those back, man, because it would just bring back so many crazy. I bet there's a lot of songs on there that I forgot are even on those by bands that I love today. I bet there was like some old Blink that I didn't realize was Blink. There's probably all kinds of stuff on there that I
There's
didn't.
mislabeled stuff too. I remember thinking certain albums were different albums because that's what it said on the mixtape. Like, no, that
Man,
wasn't the album.
dude,
But assuming I
that
listened
was
to
like
that the whole time.
LimeWire before LimeWire. So that's pretty funny that their name was just like a joke kind of, and it just they stuck around too long and it became like a why is that band named that?
Yeah, like every time you hear those stories, you know that band like was supposed to suck. Like that was
Right?
they were not supposed to be. That's just the way it goes.
So, let's see here. Did you happen to have any songs that you liked? Because this
Yeah.
album was 13 minutes and 30, excuse me, 13 songs and 35 minutes, which I think is funny because the other album is almost exactly the same.
Yeah, so I really like I Don't Get It. It had like a 80s Ramones type of vibe, very like mid-tempo and it comes off of She's No Rocket Scientist and What's in the Cuckoo Clock, which if you're not totally bought in on the Ramones core thing, it can kind of start wearing at you. And then but you get I Don't Get It and then that goes right into Zero, which I think maybe I'll say no. I was gonna say maybe the best song on this album, but I'll say that save that for a different one. Zero was a song though that they were shopping around on the demo before this, and I think yeah, that's what it was. I think Sub Pop was actually interested in them,
Oh,
and so
nice.
Zero was one of the. And you're talking about Sub Pop in 1990, so like the one that had Nirvana before
I was gonna
Nirvana
say
before
Bleach.
yeah, and you're in the East Bay, you're not that far, uh
Right. No, no,
from
no.
Seattle.
Yeah, no. East Bay and Seattle are fairly close compared to like anything in Texas.
Mhm. And then I think like the song Parasite is another one that really
Good
stood
song.
out to me. It was like a perfect blend of like the melody and their humor. Also where I hear a lot of that the Blink influence. I think that song in particular. And I think I was trying to figure out the lyrics. I assume it's about like someone with a zine or even like major labels or something. But it was I always love that subject matter. I'm Breaking Out was another one that I think has like a little bit of a slow start and then really gets going. Could have been almost like ahead of its time. You forget this is you think this is the 90s. Well, it's 1990. So everything
Right.
influeed by this is 80s ish.
80s. Yep.
And then the last one that really I like is The Girl Who Still Lives at Home.
Nice.
It's to me it's almost like a Green Day type song, like in the way it gets like that 50s pop ballad meets like a pop punk kind of song. I felt it was this one was less of Ramones derivative and more like Ramones influence. I don't think there's really a bad song on this album. I like the cover that they sent me a postcard. I think that's pretty good. So Long Sucker, I guess, is the one that I could do without.
Okay.
If I had to cut one, which this album is short, you don't need to cut any of the songs. So Long
Right.
Sucker, I guess I could do without if I had to. But overall, I mean, it's a really good album. I don't know, is this your top album by them, or would you
I don't
think?
even have a top album.
Yeah,
I don't know enough of their catalog to know. I know that every song I hear, I almost always just go, "Yeah, it's a pretty good song." Like they
yeah.
don't have stuff that I thought was like just ugh, that I can recall. Again, maybe I should go through and do like a ranking or something, man. I enjoy. I enjoy them.
I I'm I think of myself as generally fond of this album and then the Blue album, the one that was pretty big, the Bob with the Ba 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 song and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
I
good
always think
record.
of these 2 albums, and this one's like as the primordial one, and that one is like the 2 albums that I really gravitate to the most. But again, it's like we're talking about. For me, the Ramones core bands aren't really album bands; they're more. I kind of drift in and out and pick out songs and
I think that's a thing you can do with bands like this. That honestly,
mhm,
there's a lot of bands that you have to listen to their whole record. I like when a band has like I like to listen to their whole record most of the time, but I
mhm.
can also appreciate picking out half the record and putting it on a tape with maybe a mix of all their songs, and it's just one side of a tape. It's just a bunch of your favorite Mr. T Experience songs. Um,
The album before, I should say, the album they have before this, that Blue one, I think is also very very good. The one with the Gilman Street song, I just think that one's pretty rad.
let's see. Oh yeah, big black bugs bleed blue blood.
Blue,
Good
yeah,
grief, dude.
yeah. Thanks, Doctor
Fuck
Frank.
that. Yeah, dude,
Jeez.
that's ridiculous. So I I think Parasite's about a girlfriend, by the way.
Oh,
That's what it seemed like to me. I think you can make whatever you want to make out of lyrics most of the
yeah.
time.
If it makes
Uh,
you think about cool lyrics, I think that's cool. So,
my top three songs on this album, though, are "She's No Rocket Scientist," "I'm Breaking Out," and "Zero." Like those are the three. I also really liked "Psycho Girl" quite a bit
mhm,
as well. Uh, "The Girl Who Lives at Home." There's a bunch of good songs in this album, but those three are my favorite three. That once I got done listening to the album in full, like I went back and revisited those just to make sure. I was like, okay, I think I like these three the best. And I went back and listened to them, and I was like, yeah, these are good songs, man. I listened to them pretty loud. Parker liked dancing to them, so that was fun. But yeah, man, I think overall this is a pretty good record. I don't know a lot about the band. I mean, I just like what I've heard from them. I wanted to go back and listen to an album. That's all it really
mhm.
boils down to. I'm not some historian. I just,
Yeah,
hey,
and
let's talk about this for a little bit.
they haven't done a lot since like the early 2000s, really. Since basically since Lookout went away, they've been kind of just. I think more. I mean, they'll play shows and stuff, but they're more of like a legacy than a really active band.
I'll tell you the one thing about Mr. T Experience that is special to me. It's two things. One, that tape I got was probably one of the very first times I ever owned punk rock music, right? And so that's in the back of my mind all the time. And so my very first trip out of Texas, I went to Vegas with Carissa, and the very first record store that we went to, the very first thing I ever bought outside of Texas for myself was a Mr. T Experience 7-inch. It was at this record store. It was just on the wall, and I was like, that's the one I want. I always like to buy a 7-inch when I go places, and I was like, that's the one. I didn't even have to think about it. I was like, that's the one I want. And so they're just a band that like I don't know everything about. I like their music, and yeah, that's about that. I think I would probably give this album like a 7.5 to an 8, somewhere in that neighborhood. It's definitely above average.
Mhm.
Now, is it creeping into that like fantastic range? Not to me. It's good though. But yeah, getting used to his voice is going to be a chore to some people, I would think.
Yeah, I would probably put it around there as well. But like, I say that with a bit of a caveat because I'm saying that as a criticism, I think more of the genre than I would say of the song. So then, in terms of on its own terms, it's as good as I think it can kind of get with this kind of stuff. So, I would give it like a full endorsement there. But my personal ranking would be in that 7 out of 10, which I mean that's pretty darn good. That's all that's anything below the greatest albums, which is
Right.
pretty darn good.
That's the thing, man. 7 is a pretty good number in my opinion. If people don't think that's a good number, then they're misunderstanding how rankings work, in my opinion.
It's because C's have been associated with average in our society. That's what it is.
I mean,
Seven
yeah,
7 out of 10 is not bad in any other context,
right? I mean,
except for
100%. Okay.
except for we did that's a C. I don't know why I'm having an education rant on a punk rock podcast, but that's there you
Because
go.
that's what we do here. All right. Yeah, man. Mr. T Experience. Go check him out. Listen to that album. It's pretty good. I want to know what people think about his vocals.
Mm.